How's it going, everybody? Appreciate you for clicking on this video. James Gunn's new DCU officially kicked off last December with the release of Creature Commandos, and it will continue later this summer with the release of Superman and Peacemaker Season 2. With the new era and universe being ushered in by DC and Warner Brothers, there are so many directions they could go with their characters. In today's video, I wanted to talk about some TV shows I'd like to see in this new DCU. The reason I wanted to focus on shows in this video is because there's a good amount of lesser known characters that I think deserve their time in the spotlight, and especially with the way superhero movies are performing nowadays, I think it's unlikely that a lot of them get their own movies. That doesn't apply to every character on this list. In fact, there are some characters in here that have had their own movies before. With that out of the way, let's just jump right into 10 shows that I'd like to see in the DCU. So let's start by talking about Wonder Woman. I don't really feel the need to go over Wonder Woman's origin because she is the most well-known woman superhero on the planet. She's the princess of Themyscira and the eventual heir to the throne. She left the island to essentially be an ambassador of peace and ended up becoming the well-known superhero Wonder Woman. So if this is one of DC's most popular characters, why would I want a show rather than a movie? Well, it's because we've had countless TV shows focused on Batman and Superman over the years, with each of them having various iconic interpretations. More specifically, I'm talking about animated shows. Wonder Woman has never got her own animated series, and I really think she deserves it. It gives the writers a chance to explore the wider mythos of Wonder Woman, the different villains she has, and overall just expand the general public's knowledge of the character. You could even make this a period piece show, where you have season 1 with her fighting alongside the Justice Society in World War II, then season 2 goes to the Korean War, Vietnam War, or some other conflict, and as the seasons progress, you get closer and closer to the present day. I also think that just because you're running a Wonder Woman animated show doesn't mean you can't make a movie as well. The animated series could just be a prequel to where we see her in her live action movies, like a solo movie or a Justice League project. There are quite a few Wonder Woman stories that haven't been touched whatsoever, such as War of the Gods, The Circle, Hikatea, Eyes of the Gorgon, and more. Obviously, you should probably save some of those for her own movie, but my point still stands. It's honestly just crazy to me that she's never got her own animated show when Batman and Superman have had so many. I know that Batman and Superman are more well known, but Wonder Woman is not that far behind. It's called the Trinity for a reason. It's not just the duo of Batman and Superman. Wonder Woman is part of the Trinity, and I really think it's time she gets her own animated series. Out of all the shows on this list, this would probably be top 3 in the shows I'd most want to see. On the topic of characters that I feel need animated shows, let's talk about The Flash. So I'm not going to go into an origin on The Flash because we still aren't even sure when, if, or who is going to be The Flash, whether it's Barry Allen or Wally West. So I'm just going to talk about the Flash character in general. I will say I would honestly prefer that an animated show focus on the character of Barry Allen, and I'd prefer the next movie we get to focus on Wally West. We've had a full 9-season show and a movie for Barry Allen now, and we still have yet to see Wally in live action, despite him being one of DC's most popular characters. Regardless, with the catastrophic failure of The Flash both critically and financially, I'm afraid that The Flash might get the Green Lantern treatment, and what I mean by that is, we got Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern in 2011, it completely bombed, and now we're seeing our first live-action Green Lantern adaptation in 15 years next year with the release of The Lanterns show. WB clearly had no faith in the property following the flop of the Reynolds movie, and I'm a little worried the same treatment might happen with The Flash. I think a good solution to this problem, that being WB not wanting to spend a movie budget on a character that just flopped a couple years ago, would be to instead put him in his own animated series. Like Wonder Woman, we've never seen a Flash animated show. I think because of the failure of the movie in 2023, now would be the perfect time to do it. I don't have a specific storyline in mind, but The Flash has a pretty deep rogues gallery, and there's a lot of material to pull from. I just don't think you can have a DC universe without The Flash. He's arguably the 4th most popular hero in DC between him and Green Lantern. I understand not wanting to spend movie budget on this character after what happened a few years ago, but I feel like there were a lot of factors that tied into making that movie not succeed. First of all, WB was going through big changes at the time, and the rumors were that the ending was changed a couple of times before it was released. Secondly, there was an insane marketing campaign where random people like Tom Cruise and Stephen King were coming out and endorsing the movie, as well as test screeners calling it the best DC movie since The Dark Knight. Then reviews came out saying it was pretty mixed, which probably had an effect on general audiences wanting to see the movie. And of course, lastly, the main star of the movie, Ezra Miller, was involved in some pretty gross controversies that probably turned a lot of people away from seeing it as well. The Flash is a cool character and should be a main character in the DCU, and a controversial movie that flopped at the box office shouldn't change that. If you're going to make shows like Creature Commandos, then The Flash should definitely get one as well. I think it would be especially cool to see Speed Force sequences in animation as well. I mean, I know we've already seen that in things like the DCAU and the DC animated movie universe, but if they're worried about dropping a ton of money on another Flash movie, I don't think they should have to worry about it. I think that they should just make a Flash animated show. Whatever they decide to do with The Flash, they can't just can him from the universe, because that would be the ultimate worst decision. He's one of the most popular and well-known characters characters that they have. If you're gonna make an Authority movie, a Creature Commandos show, and a Waller show, then the Flash definitely deserves his own project. They better not just kick him to the curb like Green Lantern. Next up, let's talk about The Question. The Question was created by Steve Ditko and made his first appearance in comics in 1967 for Charlton Comics. 16 years later, DC Comics acquired most of Charlton's characters, and The Question was merged into mainline DC continuity. The Question's real name in the comics is Victor Sage, and his comics are usually noir detective stories. He has no powers and has to rely fully on his wits to solve the crimes he investigates. He usually works for the little guy, I guess you could say, as a lot of his comics deal with him exposing corruption, and a big theme central to his books is urban decay. The Question is also a very deep thinker. His books are often full of inner monologues about philosophical topics. You could also call him a conspiracy theorist, but not in a total nutcase kind of way. He approaches these conspiracy theories knowing that they might not be true, but he tries his best to get to the bottom of them anyway. If you're familiar with Watchmen at all, The Question is who the character Rorschach was directly based off of. Originally, Alan Moore wanted to use Charlton's characters for Watchmen, but he was told no by DC, so he created his own original characters instead. I think The Question would be a massive hit, not only for DC fans, but general audiences as well, if done right. You don't even have to market this as a superhero show, because it wouldn't be one. It would be a noir detective show based in Hub City about The Question exposing some kind of conspiracy or corruption. I know these terms are so overused, especially when talking about superhero media, but this show would definitely be very grounded and gritty. Again, Victor Sage has no powers. He relies fully on his brain to solve crimes. So you could even get people to watch this that don't like superhero projects. In my opinion, it's a home run idea for a show, and honestly, I think it's very likely that The Question will be getting his own show at some point. If you want to read up on this character, I'd suggest reading Denny O'Neil's Question Run. It is very good, and in my opinion is still the best piece of media this character has ever had. If you don't like reading, then check out Justice League Unlimited, because he's one of the best supporting characters in that show. Next up, let's talk about Adam Strange. Adam Strange made his debut in comics in 1958 in Showcase number 17. Adam was originally an archaeologist, but by chance was transported to the planet Rann via a Zeta beam. A Zeta beam is essentially a teleportation device that can transport somebody across light years of distance instantly. The creator of this device is Sardath, leader of the Ranians, someone who Adam befriended not long after arriving on Rann. He also met Sardath's daughter Alana, whom he fell in love with. Rann is known in the DC universe as a very scientifically advanced planet, with technologies such as the Zeta beam, jetpacks, powerful ray guns, and advancements in medicine. Adam Strange is known as the hero of two worlds, where he tries to balance life between Earth, where he is from, and Rann, where his wife is. I'd like to see the DC cosmos explored thoroughly in this new DCU, and I think by giving this character his own show, you can lead into a lot of cool stories. For one, the Rann-Thanagar conflict is in my opinion one of the more interesting storylines in the DC cosmos. If you don't know, Thanagar is the home world of Hawkman and Hawkgirl, and these two planets absolutely hate each other. I think fleshing out that story could be cool, especially with the philosophical and cultural differences of the two planets. I also think if you wanted to do a show where Adam Strange is just hopping planet to planet almost like an anthology show, I think that could be really cool. Show him exploring a different planet from the DC cosmos each episode. One reservation with giving Adam Strange his own live-action TV show is that it would probably cost a ton of money. Any show set in space is going to cost a lot of money, and especially with a character like this where the show would pretty much exclusively take place in space, it would not be cheap. So honestly, I think it's more likely that he gets a movie or an animated series instead of a live-action TV show, but regardless, I would watch it. I think he's a really underrated character. Another thing though is that Tom King is heavily involved with this DCU, and as you all have heard me say numerous times, I love Tom King, and I do love his Adam Strange book, Strange Adventures, but I don't think this would be a good adaptation to put in the DCU. I won't spoil the book, but Adam Strange isn't exactly the greatest person in that book, and I'd honestly rather see a more Silver Age adaptation of the character, where it's kind of just a kooky fun space odyssey. Bringing us to the next character on this list, we have Animal Man. So Animal Man made his debut in Strange Adventures number 180 in 1965. When he was a teenager, he went for a hunt in the woods, and when he came back, he had changed. He now had the ability to mimic animal abilities. For example, to fly like a bird or to run like a cheetah. He has a mystical connection to the Red, a force that binds all animal life in the universe. Essentially, Swamp Thing is the avatar of the Green, which is all plant life, and Animal Man is the avatar of the Red, which is all animal life in the universe. As the avatar of the Red, his responsibility is pretty much to protect all animal life. He was a small-time superhero for a little while before marrying his high school girlfriend and moving to San Diego, where he became a Hollywood stuntman. He then had 2 kids, Maxine and Cliff. His real name is Buddy Baker, and he's a family man trying to balance his superhero life with his family life. In fact, I think it's an element of his character that makes him really interesting. There are 2 major runs for Animal Man in the comics, Animal Man by Grant Morrison and New 52 Animal Man by Jeff Lemire. New 52 Animal Man doesn't focus solely on Animal Man himself, it focuses on the family dynamic and the struggle the family is currently going through. Buddy Baker is a small-time actor, but he doesn't make enough to cut it. Not only that, but without spoiling anything, something happens with his daughter Maxine that makes it virtually impossible for Buddy to focus solely on his family, which distances him further and further from his wife. Although the Morrison run is widely considered one of the best DC runs ever published, I'd like to see the Lemire run adapted to the DCU. You can tell there is tension at the beginning of the book in the family, but just wait because it gets infinitely worse. I might sound like a sadist when I say this, but I think the family drama in this run is great. It's awesome to see your favorite characters take out the villain of the week, but people also love relatability in superheroes, and I feel like even the most perfect of families can relate to family hardships. I also love the introduction of the red in this series. The green has been around forever, with Swamp Thing being the protector or avatar of all plant life for decades at this point. But the red was a new concept in this run. It sort of was in the Morrison run, with it being called the Life Web, but it wasn't nearly as fleshed out as it becomes in here. Like I mentioned earlier, Buddy Baker is the avatar of the red, meaning it is his responsibility to protect all animal life. I won't say any more than that, because if I go any further I will give a lot away, and I really think everybody watching this video should go read this run if you haven't yet. It also has a surprising amount of horror in it, and the stakes get really high, like way higher than you would expect for an Animal Man book. If you've read Alan Moore's Swamp Thing, it has a similar horror vibe to that. I will say, I acknowledge the greatness of the Grant Morrison Animal Man run, and I do think it's very good, but the Jeff Lemire New 52 Animal Man has always been one of my favorite DC Comics runs ever. I read it in 7th grade, and it was one of the first obscure character runs I ever decided to read. If they ever do decide to make an Animal Man show, I think they should adapt the New 52 run and go full horror family drama. If they were to do that, they should probably wait until after Swamp Thing so that they can flesh out the green first. But I really hope that they make this show nonetheless. So next up on this list we have Mr. Miracle. Buckle up if you don't know the lore behind this character because it gets a little wacky and I'm gonna shorten it a bit so we're not here for an hour. So in the cosmos you have 2 planets right next to each other. You have New Genesis, which is ruled by Highfather and perceived as a paradise planet, and you have Apocalypse, which is essentially hell and ruled by one of the most threatening forces in all of DC, Darkseid. At the time of Mr. Miracle's birth, the 2 planets were on the brink of war. In an attempt to stop the conflict, a deal was made between Highfather and Darkseid, where the 2 leaders would exchange sons. As a result, Darkseid's son Orion was sent to be raised on New Genesis, while Highfather's son was sent to be raised in the fiery pits of Apocalypse. From here forward, I'm going to refer to Highfather's son as Scott, because he gets that name eventually. But yeah, Scott gets sent to live in an orphanage from hell, led by one of Darkseid's top servants, Granny Goodness. These orphanages were awful, and Scott was constantly tortured while living there. Unlike the others in the orphanage, however, Scott's spirit was unbreakable, and he always kept pushing forward. As he got older, he continued to rebel against the tyranny and oppressive nature of Apocalypse, and failed many times to escape. Eventually, he met Big Barda, one of Darkseid's top soldiers, and member of the Female Furies, who over time was also starting to dislike Apocalypse. Eventually, Scott was able to escape Apocalypse with the help of Big Barda, where he fled to Earth. Once arriving on Earth, Scott met a man by the name of Thaddeus Brown, a circus escape artist using the stage name Mr. Miracle. Eventually, Brown was murdered, and Scott took on the alias of Mr. Miracle, becoming a crime fighter on Earth. This isn't where the story ends, but that's where I'm going to stop for this video. If you want to learn more about this character, I recommend Jack Kirby's New Gods, or another story that I'll talk about in just a second. As you can probably tell though, this character is very different from most heroes. His origin is very unique, and making a show about him also introduces a whole new corner of the DC universe with the New Gods. They're a very obscure set of characters that hasn't really been widely touched upon yet outside of Zack Snyder's Justice League, but even then they're barely touched upon. We do know that Tom King is one of the people that crafted the DCU alongside James Gunn, and in my opinion, one of Tom King's best books is the Eisner Award-winning Mr. Miracle miniseries from 2018. I think because King is involved in the DCU and he's already getting one adaptation with Woman of Tomorrow, it's very possible and honestly likely that Mr. Miracle gets his own show. Also, Scott's relationship with Big Barda is one of the best couple dynamics in the DC universe, so it would be cool to see that on screen too. They're definitely a package deal, and you can't have one without the other. But yeah, not only do I have a ton of love for Scott and Barda, but I also am a huge fan of the New Gods. If WB doesn't want to make a New Gods movie, which I wouldn't wouldn't be surprised if they didn't, considering it would probably cost a lot of money. I think you could get brief introductions to these characters in a Mr. Miracle show before telling the full-blown New Gods story, let's say, in an animated film. I have the omnibus of Kirby's New Gods, and even though the stories are 50 years old, I still feel like they hold up pretty well, and I'd love to see the New Gods fleshed out in the DCU. Especially Mr. Miracle though. I mean, he is my favorite New God. I think he deserves a spot there, and he is one of those characters where I feel like if he did get the chance to be in the mainstream, general audiences would really like him. I mean, obviously you have to do him right, but my point still stands. He's a really complex and compelling character, and I think he deserves a spot in the DCU, preferably with a TV show, in my opinion. So next I want to talk about another one of my favorite lesser known characters in DC, Static Shock. Before I go any further on Static, I will say that he does have a very good animated series on HBO Max, and it definitely is worth checking out. So if you want to learn about his origin there, rather than hear some random guy on YouTube tell you a condensed version, by all means watch it. It's a great show. With that out of the way, let's talk about the origin of Static Shock. So Static, originally known as Virgil Hawkins, was part of a huge gang showdown in his home city of Dakota. He wanted revenge on someone who was bullying him, which is why he showed up. Things didn't go to plan though, as the authorities showed up and doused the crowd in what they believed to be tear gas. What the cops didn't know is that they actually had gassed the entire crowd with a mutagen, later known as Q-juice. This gas gave metahuman abilities to those who it affected, and Virgil Hawkins developed electromagnetic powers as a result of the gas. Static is just a kid when he gets his powers. I want to say he's like 14 or 15 when he gets them. So he has to balance school, family, and other things with his superhero life, which is really difficult for someone who is just a kid. It's kind of similar to Spider-Man with the high school stuff he has to deal with. That is the only comparison I'll make between the two because they're entirely different characters, but they do share a similar aspect with that. I think Static is long overdue for a live-action interpretation, and I think a show would be the perfect way to do it. I also think this character would be a great way for the younger generation to connect with the universe. People like characters that are relatable, and somebody struggling with the difficulties of high school could be impactful on the DCU connecting with kids and teenagers. Also, similarly to what I said about Mr. Miracle, Static Shock could be a gateway to more obscure characters. For those that don't know, Static was actually not a DC creation. He was created by Dwayne McDuffie for Milestone Comics in the early 90s, and Milestone was created by McDuffie and a few other creators to start a new superhero universe that focused on diversity and representation. So in came Milestone Comics, who were eventually bought out by DC in 1999, and genuinely, these characters need to be included in the DCU. There are so many obscure characters from this universe that deserve some love from the mainstream, and I think Static Shock would be a perfect way to introduce characters from this corner of the universe. Characters like Icon, Rocket, Hardware, and more deserve love on the small screen. I'm going off on a little tangent here, but my main point of this segment is that Static deserves his own show. I'm not the only one who thinks this either. I've been hearing this sentiment echoed online for years, and DC should just give the people what they want. Give us a Static Shock show. Bringing us to the next show on this list, we have Birds of Prey. So the Birds of Prey made their self-titled series debut in 1996 with Chuck Dixon serving as writer. The Birds of Prey were formed by Oracle, also known as Barbara Gordon, because she needed a team surrounding her that could help her deal with threats beyond just using her intellect. At this point in comics, Barbara Gordon had been wheelchair-bound following her attack at the hands of the Joker in Alan Moore's The Killing Joke. She continued to deal with villains and threats as best she could, but there was only so much she could do, as a lot of these threats needed to be dealt with physically. She initially only recruited Black Canary to work with her, but over time she recruited more members, such as Huntress, Lady Blackhawk, and even more down the line. It also helps that the characters that make up the team are very compelling. I can't speak as much for Lady Blackhawk. She is great in this series, but aside from her time on the Birds of Prey, I haven't read much on her. But as for the other members, Barbara Gordon, Huntress, and Black Canary, they're great characters, and this run made them among my favorites in the DC universe. I really do love the idea of the Birds getting their own project at some point, and this concept could be a home run if you get the right writers. It's no secret that female-led superhero projects haven't been very successful recently, and I think that this show could be a great opportunity to showcase some of the best women superheroes in the DC universe. The Batgirls, Canary, Huntress, Lady Blackhawk, Zatanna, I could go on, but my point is that these are characters that pretty much every DC fan I know would love to see adapted in some way, and this could be a great way to do it. A lot of these characters are fan favorites, and I think a show where they're all working together would be awesome. Also, I will say, I think Chuck Dixon's time writing Birds of Prey was pretty good, but Gail Simone absolutely knocked it out of the park when she took over. I mean, of course she did, but really, among all the great stories she has written, I think this might be her best work. Also, if you want to pick up some newer comics to read, the Kelly Thompson Birds of Prey run is really good. It's ongoing too, so there's a new issue every month. I think it's one of the best series being published by DC right now. Out of all the shows on this list, this is the one that I want the most. I love the Birds of Prey. I think they're really underrated, and I also think they were kind of done dirty in the 2020 movie Birds of Prey. I mean, I didn't think the movie was terrible, but it just wasn't really the Birds of Prey. Like, why is Harley Quinn on the Birds of Prey, and why is Cassandra Cain not Cassandra Cain? None of that matters anymore, as we're onto a new regime and a new universe. So James Gunn, let's get the Birds of Prey right this time and do a Birds of Prey show. So next, let's talk about one of the fan favorite characters in the Bat family, the Red Hood. Forgive me if I fly through the Red Hood's origin, but I've already gone over it a couple times in this channel's history, including the last video, so I'm a little burned out on talking about it. Anyway, Jason Todd was taken in as the second Robin following the departure of Dick Grayson as the first Robin. Jason was raised in an abusive home, however, leading to him having trouble regulating his emotions and controlling his impulses. Eventually, he was caught in a trap by the Joker, horribly beaten, and presumably killed by him. This broke Batman, and for years, Jason remained dead. Then, out of nowhere, a masked vigilante sporting a red bat symbol and mask appeared in Gotham, dealing with criminals by killing them. This obviously caught Batman's attention as he has a no-kill policy, and he decided to go after this new masked vigilante. However, this vigilante seemed to know every move Batman is going to make before he makes it. He knows his strategies, his fighting techniques, and overall is unlike anybody Batman had ever gone up against. Eventually, it's revealed that this character is actually a resurrected Jason Todd, back to get revenge on Gotham's criminal underworld, the Joker, and Batman for not killing the Joker after he killed Jason. I did see your guys' comments about not wanting to see another Red Hood adaptation, and I think it's fair, although I still would want to see it. An alternative route they could take to reintroducing Jason Todd could be to have him return and form the Outlaws. So the Outlaws made their debut in 2011 with their New 52 run, and they also had a run in DC Rebirth. The two iterations of the team differ with members, but the leader and main character of these books has always been Jason Todd. Like I said, there have been various members of the Outlaws, with names like Arsenal, Starfire, Bizarro, and Artemis making up different iterations of the team. The Outlaws are definitely more morally gray than the other superhero teams, and they do sometimes push the boundaries of the law to solve a problem. And by pushing the boundaries, I mean breaking them. It's kind of the Outlaws thing. It's why they're called the Outlaws. Jason and the Outlaws do believe that they're doing the right thing, and will go to extreme measures to accomplish what they believe is right. I think this could make for a really cool show because, for one, Jason gets the spotlight in his own TV show. Secondly, you get to see other characters you don't often see in larger roles, such as Bizarro and Artemis of Themyscira, as well as fan favorite characters like Arsenal and Starfire. Like I said, this team will go to extreme measures to get the job done, and if it were to get adapted, it would definitely be made for mature audiences. I've only read like halfway through the DC Rebirth run, and I think conceptually it would make for a great show. If I were to pick the team's roster, I'd go with Jason, Bizarro, Artemis, and Arsenal. Especially Roy though, because I think him and Jason's friendship is great, and I'd love to see it adapted for the DCU. The only reason I didn't say Starfire is because I'd much rather see her as a member of the Teen Titans, and overall I feel like she just fits in much better there. Regardless, my point is, if they don't want to introduce Red Hood to the DCU by adapting the Under the Red Hood storyline, I think a cool way they could reintroduce Jason would be through this property. I will say though, I still do think it's very likely that they're going to go with a Batman Under the Red Hood movie in the DCU. Even if you think it's repetitive and redundant, it's pretty much a guaranteed moneymaker. I mean, anything with Batman in the title is a moneymaker, but that story is particularly iconic. It's never been adapted to live action. I'd say a Batman Under the Red Hood live action movie would probably make at least $800 million. But aside from an Under the Red Hood project, I would love to see Red Hood lead this team of the Outlaws. Alright, now bringing me to the last show on this list, let's talk about Green Arrow and Black Canary. So these two are easily some of my favorite characters in DC, and seeing them get their own show would be really cool. And some might say, well, we've already got a Green Arrow show. In fact, its final episode aired just 5 years ago. Well, to that I say, that character wasn't really the Green Arrow we're used to seeing in comics and other media. Don't get me wrong, I liked the first couple seasons of Arrow, and I was a fan of the Arrowverse for a little bit, but this Green Arrow is actually just Batman. He is nothing like his loudmouth, witty self from the comics. He's always brooding and extremely edgy, which is something that works for this universe, but doesn't really work as a great adaptation of Oliver Queen from the comic books. We also didn't get a faithful adaptation of Black Canary either. I think there's actually 3 different Canaries from the Arrow show, and none of them are really that similar to Dinah Lance from DC Comics. Green Arrow and Black Canary are both fan favorite characters among DC fans, and they deserve faithful adaptations in this new DCU. As for story direction, I think Mike Grell's The Longbow Hunters would be a cool direction to take it. Rather than dealing with massive supervillain threats, I and many many others think Oliver is much better suited for a more grounded story, which is exactly what the Longbow Hunters is. Think sort of like Netflix's Daredevil, but with Green Arrow and Black Canary. I feel like that's what a Longbow Hunters adaptation would be like. That being said, I wouldn't want this show to be extremely dark and gritty. I think Oliver is a lot of fun when he's talking shit, and he always has a lot to say. Whether it's him being angry, funny, or sarcastic, he has a lot of personality and it needs to be showed off. At least better than it was in the Arrow show, because again, that dude is only Green Arrow in name and costume. Everything else, he's nothing really like him. Same with Canary. She deserves a faithful adaptation, especially since she wasn't even in the Arrow show to begin with. Her and Oliver's dynamic is one of the best in DC Comics, and I would love to see them and a lot of the Arrow family share the small screen together. With that being said, guys, those are 10 shows that I would like to see featured in this new DCU. I really appreciate the love on the last video, and I did just want to quickly apologize. I didn't put enough spoiler warnings on the last video. That is something that I will make sure to do going forward. I know this is like my 18th video, but I still am very new to this YouTube thing, so there are still things I'm learning. That's not an excuse. I apologize. But yeah, I really appreciate you guys clicking on this video. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one.